Good morning, business owners. Mike Bosma, your business savvy CPA, coming to you from Studio B. That's Studio Bosma Business Center. But also for the benefit of our radio listeners, good Saturday morning. Mike Bosma from Bosma on Business. Each and every Saturday, we strive to give people 60 minutes of what I refer to as action-packed business adventure. Now, if you're not used to the show, I will tell you, nobody ever knew you can learn so many interesting stories out of business owners. You remember the first time I pitched the radio show to former program manager on KKOH, Dan Mason. He says, so let me get this right. You're a CPA and you want to talk about businesses. I go, yep, that's going to be amazing. And he said, I can't think of a worse genre to put people to sleep. So I was like, no. So I started telling some of the stories that, I run into every day. And he was like, no, I didn't know business owners had such a crazy whirlwind life. So speaking of a crazy whirlwind life, on today's installment of Bosma on Business, Taylor Swanson from Northern Nevada Window Tinting is going to talk about some of the roller coaster he's on, growing and scaling his business. So without further ado, Taylor, welcome to Bosma on Business.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. We get this thing started off with a little bit about your business. How'd you get into the window tinting business?
Oh, man. I mean, it's definitely the only thing I've ever done. It was my first job out of high school. I was a junior in high school and went to get one of my personal trucks tinted after I attempted it myself, and it looked absolutely terrible. So went to a local window tint shop in Carson City and pretty much ended up leaving with a job afterwards, and really have done it ever since. So I think this is about my 15th year in the trade doing it. And then on my own, I think this is my 8th year.
So Taylor, you started with, the tint shop in Carson, learned the trade, but then at some juncture you decided, I don't want to work for the man. I want to be the man. How did that come to pass?
Yeah. I mean, it evolved from, working in Carson City, moving up to Reno, actually working for the Dolans at the Dolan dealership, doing it in-house, kind of grinding that out. And then, a good friend of mine started his own shop that I pretty much helped him start day one, worked there for years. And it just, working with friends is tough. I'm sure a lot of people know that,
All right.
And it was somewhat supposed to be a partnership, and then partnerships, same thing, super tough to where, you don't always see eye to eye, and, he thinks he can do this part better. I think I can do that part better. So I definitely rolled the dice and went out on my own, which was scary, in Reno. It is actually super competitive what we do. I think when I started, there was about 12 shops in town, and, it took a dinner with a mentor to kind of push me, to really, I was young. He's like, you don't really have much to lose. I can get a job doing window film in pretty much any state, hired on the spot, and make, $70,000 to $100,000 a year as an installer. So he's like, you really got nothing to lose to just try. So I pretty much,
you can lose $70,000 to $100,000 a year because
you could, yeah, you could.
That's when
Absolutely.
you start.
No
Takes
doubt.
a minute to get the thing going, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. So it's basically took all my savings. I had about $20,000 is what I started, my business with. Bought a van and just started, the internet. And the internet was huge, promoting and Google, making a website, a Google, a Facebook, all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely starting that other business with him from day one, I think was a big advantage because I learned a lot of the growing pains to where when I went on my own, I kind of skipped those hard spots to make myself a little bit more successful faster, I guess you could say.
Right. So you took that roadmap from the partnership and okay, I think I can do this. And then I don't have to fight with my business partner. I just have to fight with myself.
Exactly. Yep. And that's, it's everybody always says, you have set your own hours, this and that. I mean, when I first started, it was 7 days a week for about 3 years is what it took to where I could kind of work normal hours, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I, when people ask me what business I'm in, sometimes when I'm a little cheeky, I tell them human trafficking, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, well, we raise other people's kids as a foster parent. It's same deal. You can lose a lot of money. It's not a great business model, but but I think that risk you took, going from I kind of have this sure thing. I have a fallback. I can always, if this thing flames,
no doubt.
But it was funny. So we, 4 months ago, brought on an au pair. Her name's Tutu from Oswego, Africa. But it's funny because she says, "Oh, Mr. Bosma, you're the boss. So like, you don't have to worry about going to work. And I said, no, that means I have 33 people that I answer
Yep.
to every day.
Absolutely.
Right.
No doubt.
What was that first year getting going? Like I say, you burned through the savings. What were some of the difficulties you encountered that first year?
Well, when I first started, obviously I only had that set amount of money. So I started just being mobile. So I would go to people's houses, work on their cars. And it limited me because I could only really go to people that actually have a garage
Mm,
to work to try to stay out of the elements. So not everybody has a garage, or they got stuff in their garage, or, they live in an apartment, or they're in town visiting, or, there's a lot of work that I had to turn down because it wasn't the perfect scenario for me to do the work and do a good job. So that was probably the biggest struggle, to where I think it was about 4 or 5 months in is when I needed to get a building. To
right.
where I'm kind of doing the math on it. If I drive, I would go to Truckee, I would go to Dayton, I would go to Fernley, Carson, just pretty much our whole Northern Nevada greater area. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, if all these people came to me, I could do a lot more work, just because the drive time,
Mhm.
and this and that, and just having a setup that's efficient rather than going to someone's house, setting up all my tools, doing the job. If everything was here ready to go, I could be a lot more productive. So that's when I kind of rolled the dice on the next big step, which was getting my first shop.
Well, and that's where, for the benefit of our listeners, what Taylor's saying is I spent a goodly amount, if not all, of my capital
Oh yeah.
going the auto route, doing the
Hmm.
mobile route. And I'm
No
like,
doubt.
oh, I have to pivot. I
Yep.
I'm gonna do a shop. You still have the van, or
Hmm.
or did you trade it in and
No, I
monetize
kept
it?
it. Yeah, no, I kept it. Yeah, because it's useful. And then, another part of my business too is commercial buildings. So I do homes, commercial buildings, which you do need the van just for ladders,
Right.
tools, supplies,
Sure.
all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. So the van stayed.
Right. But that's where, and so but how hard was it convincing a landlord that you were a good risk?
That was tough. Yeah. My first landlord, I still actually tint all of his vehicles. Super cool guy. And he actually wanted to meet me at Starbucks. So,
Okay.
I sat down, met him at Starbucks, kind of showed him, my numbers of what I do, and he rolled the dice on me big time, but
Okay.
it paid off because he gets a great discount still.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
Yep.
no, and that's where I think a lot of times working with a lot of the larger business owners, or commercial developers, they're not so inclined to rent to
No.
some young buck who's
Hmm.
just a couple months into their thing, right?
Yep.
Because they're like, I'll just rent it to somebody else. I don't, somebody took a risk on you, and they
Yep.
got lifetime cheap tinting, so
Yeah.
there's some payoff for them.
No doubt. Yeah.
Now, are you still the same spot?
I'm not. No. So I stayed in that facility, which was great when it was just me, for about almost 3 years
Mhm.
before I graduated to the building that we're currently in now, which I've been in for 5 years. But it just got to the point where it was just me, but I was gaining traction and momentum of doing good work. The biggest thing is answering the phone, is what I've noticed. I call around, I get all my stuff worked on at multiple businesses around town, and just the amount of people that don't actually answer the phone or return calls is kind of mind blowing. I think that's one thing where I really strived, is no matter what, make it an effort to answer the first time or call back within like 10, 15 minutes. I
Right.
usually, that's huge.
That's a little phrase that pays. To answer the phone
No doubt. That's the biggest
goes a
thing.
long way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, that's kind of the adventure there. But rolling the dice on the next scale to this building was even scarier, just because I was at the point when COVID happened, is when I moved out of my first building, which I believe the whole shop was about 2,600 square feet. And when COVID happened, a lot of people got a bunch of extra money. They got a bunch of time off, to where they are getting projects done that they normally weren't, to where I was getting 60 phone calls a day. Hey,
Oh, wow.
can you tint my car today? And I'm like, no, I'm 3, 4 weeks out, to where I saw now I'm putting off business again because I
Mhm.
can't accept all this business incoming. So that's where I had to do the next graduation and go to the building that we're in now. Yeah.
How big's the building you're in now?
6,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but that's probably more than doubled your rent, right?
Yes. Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. And I think those are things, taking an educated guess, get
Hmm.
out of your one lease, get into the other one.
Yep.
And I think, again, what was the difference between getting into that next lease? with that
Um,
next landlord
yeah.
versus the first
So
one?
yes, met a really good customer. That's a commercial real estate agent, and connections too are huge.
Right.
With anything, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I've learned that a lot, being in business, but met with him and looked at a few, and then we found the unit that I'm in now that was being leased directly from the owner,
Right.
which I think that's another big advantage for, small businesses like you're saying. When you're dealing with a property manager, they're constantly getting, ton of applications. They're just looking at the paper in front of them. When you can meet with an owner, it's a little bit more personable. They're a little bit more realistic. They're most likely a business owner themselves. So I think that plays into a big advantage. But graduating to this size building, it was a lot more money up front for security deposits and then, the lease itself. Now there's camp fees. Now I have to pay for my own dumpster. Now I have to pay for every repair on the building, heating, HVAC. If anything happens, it's on me now. And I didn't
Hmm.
really know that going into this size building, but that's super common once you get into the bigger buildings.
Right. Yeah. That whole concept is called a triple net lease.
Yep.
You're like, hey, you're paying for the ability to use the building, but basically you and the other tenants are on the hook for all the overhead. It's
Absolutely.
great if you're a landlord.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
awesome.
oh,
You
it's
don't
the
have any
best.
risk. I
Yeah.
get paid.
No doubt, yeah, and that's kind of my next goal too, is to not have a landlord, because you do the math on this building here. 5 years that I've been here, the amount that I've paid, I mean, it makes my stomach hurt. It really does.
Indeed. So I've got Taylor Swanson from Northern Nevada Window Tinting talking about his journey jumping into the entrepreneurial waters. When we come back, we're going to really delve into some of the benefits of if he chooses to buy, how that works, and how to make it more tax efficient, more cash efficient. When we come back, it's Bosma on Business.
What if you had some money waiting for you at the IRS? Money you could use to fix up the house, tune up the car, get a little something for the family, or save for a rainy day. If you worked and didn't make much money last year, find out about the Earned Income Tax Credit at irs.gov. It makes life a little easier.
Welcome back to Bosma on Business. Your host, Mike Bosma. On camera, on studio, on the phone, whatever. My guest on today's installment of Bosma on Business, Taylor Swanson from Northern Nevada Window Tinting. Taylor, one of the things is you were talking about your journey going from convincing somebody on lease one that, hey, upgrading to lease two. I remember I had a friend of mine that we've known each other for 20, 30 years. And he wanted, he's went exactly what you said. He in the auto, but he's an automobile mechanic. And he's
Mhm.
like, I'm partners. I can't get along with my partner. I want to go do my own thing. Okay. And he says, I need some accounting. Would you help me? Of course. And he's telling me about all the hoops he's jumping through trying to get a building rented. And I'm like, well, I had just become a business broker, and I knew of a listing for an automobile shop that was in primo location, like
Mhm.
grade A location. Places he was looking at was in a strip mall, have to drive down an alley type of thing. And I'm like, I think you can buy this thing and it comes with a lease, and you'll pay for the business with the money you save off what the difference between what this other company's trying to charge you versus what this rent is.
Absolutely.
And so he ended up buying that business. And, that's, it's just, I would have never known. Like, we talk about some of the interesting little pivots you do as a business owner. Like, when I started as a business broker, I was retiring from being a CPA, and I realized, no, the business broker and the CPA really go together. Right.
Mhm.
If you can understand the tax and accounting part of this thing, you can really move the needle for people trying to buy or sell a business. So we put all that together, and then we threw in wealth advisory for fun and call it the trifecta. So, and that's where, as you were talking about that second lease, I was like, I wonder if he's ever considering buying a building. So
Absolutely.
have you started looking yet?
Yeah. So I originally signed a 5-year lease where I'm at now. The building's awesome. They're condoed out, each unit. I think there's about 12 of us here. The biggest thing for what I do, is I need a 14-foot bay door. And that helps me take on more business. I do RVs, motorhomes, big rigs, heavy equipment. I'd never want to be able to say no to a job if it's for, something silly like it won't fit in the shop. So when my 5-year lease came up, I approached my landlord, which he's actually an angel investor. So I, of course, went online, nerded out, figured out how much he paid, for my building, how long I've been there. And we approached him, hey, would you owner finance this building? And, doing the math on it, he gained, since I've been here, about 600,000 in equity on the building. I paid him, about 60,000 bucks a year for the building for 5 years. And he told me no, he's not ready to sell this building yet.
He's like, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah. And I get his side, so I ended up signing another 5-year lease, but the lease is flexible. I'm allowed to sell to where if an opportunity for another building comes up, I can sublease it. I've been with him so long. We have a pretty good relationship that if something, opportunity did come up, I think it wouldn't be the end of the world if I left. But, definitely looking, but also doing the math, if I paid what he paid, it would be amazing. And
it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. And that's kind of what I'm realizing is, your older self will always thank you, if you make a move like that, which I wish I did, because like I said, in the 5 years, he's gained over $600,000 in equity in this building, which I could have gained, if I would have made a move like that. But for the price that I paid now, depending on obviously how much you can afford to put down and whatnot, it would definitely increase my monthly operational cost, if I own this building versus leasing it now. Because he did give me a very sweetheart deal for the next 5 years that I signed. So then that's kind of the flip side. It would be about double if I purchased the building from him.
Really? Okay. So
yeah.
Can I ask you what your rent is?
Yeah. So it's about almost 6,000 a month
rent.
all in.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm about 6,000 all in. Yeah.
Okay. So kind of the way, for the benefit of our listeners, the way this thing works, right? At $6,000 a month, that's $72,000 a year. So, and then you do this thing, it's called the cap rate. So I'm going to pull up my iPhone calculator.
Yep.
And when you go to like LoopNet or CoStar, you start looking at these things, a lot of times you'll see the cap rate listed and the cap rate's like 6%, 7%. The problem is debt is now 7.5% if you get a good loan. So, 7.5%. So you're never going to buy a building that has a cap rate less than your cost of funds. Otherwise, you're moving backwards. So let's just say somebody's reasonable and you get an 8 cap. So it's $72,000 divided by 0.08. What that would mean, you can buy a $1,000 building and basically be at the same.
Yep.
And so
exactly.
And for $900,000 in today's market,
can't get this shop.
He can't get but that's what I think what's interesting, right? Because when you look, Taylor, when you're looking on LoopNet or CoStar, it's, I would also encourage you, so like, number one, find the place that you want to be. Like find just where, if I was in this location, or this block where there's a ton of people, it's easy to get in and out. It had, those types of amenities. And then because once you locate, location, right? So
all day. Yep.
So, and especially like with my friend, the mechanic, what his came with was great frontage. So just the fact that he had his business name on a highly traveled street, it was its own billboard. I mean, that alone, if you were to go buy a billboard, I mean, it's probably $5,000 a month just for the billboard. So if you can, so like when I bought the Bosma Business Center, like I had all those same sensitivities. So like, let's have it highly visible, right? So that way, it advertises itself, all that kind of stuff. And it's been very successful. Generally, people know where the building is. So if you were to pull that one off, right, then you're like, well, you can actually increase what your spend is, but you're getting it back in advertising because you're getting the frontage, the advertising for free.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, and then it's not necessarily, everything that's been listed for any amount of time probably isn't a good deal. And so what you have to do is, hire, my brokerage is NII Alliance, or go to your realtor buddy,
That's who I
whoever.
use.
Okay. But what you're going to do is, and then you just start pounding the pavement and start
No doubt.
asking people
Mhm.
whether or not they're going to say, I want to buy your place, and even consider, I might want to even buy your business.
Mhm.
Right. And it, like approach every window tint shop that's got a good location, and like just buy that business. And then the
Yeah.
building ends up becoming free.
No doubt. Yeah.
So
That's the plan on an exit strategy as well is, the business is worth so much, but when you own the building, I mean, that's where all the money's at, in my opinion.
I don't know that I'd say that. But I think that'll be good fodder for the next segment. Because what everybody believes, right? And when I sell my business, that then I'll have a tenant for my building unless they want to buy the building. But most people
Yep.
buying a business can't afford the building because they're just getting
Yep.
started.
Exactly.
So, but when we come back, I'll tell you about the downside to that strategy.
Okay.
It's Mike Bosma from Bosma on Business.
In life, things aren't scripted.
If you're an athlete, we need people like you and translate those skills to officiating.
You can get a lot out of it.
It happens in every town, in every game.
We never have a perfect game, but the rewards always outweigh the negativities.
Welcome back to Bosma on Business. Your host, Mike Bosma. On the phone, Taylor Swanson, talking about, that journey of going from renting to, maybe wanting to purchase. And what I was discussing before the break was, in fact, I've got another auto shop for sale. We're in contract, and the buyer is very interested in the shop, right? So the seller owns the shop. Well, I'll rent you the shop, and the seller's thinking this is going to be great for me because this is my retirement. I get this money every month. It's going to be great. I already know the tenant. It's my old business. I feel very comfortable with all of it. The problem is when somebody gets in 5 years, just like you, Taylor, and you're like, maybe I want that equity, right? And then so what always happens is the person that sold the business and is leasing it back to the occupant, I'd probably say 80% of the time, their buyer ends up moving at the end of that first lease. They move somewhere else.
Okay.
And there's something that goes on psychologically with somebody who's like, well, I paid you all this money for the building, and now you're still making it here. I need to go make some money. And when you buy a business, there's always uncertainty, things that happen just in the normal course of business. It just is the beast. And there's always just a little bit of angst about that with a buyer who's renting from the seller.
No doubt.
What I tell my sellers is, as soon as you get this contract done, sell the building. And they're like, but I already know. I said, well, just go buy, if this building is worth like $900,000, go buy another $900,000 building.
Yep.
You're fine, right? But that way, there's not going to be that same heartburn with your buyer and the new landlord. They're not going to care, right? Because so now it's not so personal. And you can do a 1031 exchange, it's tax-free, doesn't cost you anything. But yeah, I'd say, Taylor, just on the financial planning part of the equation, buying the building, what you just have to get your mind around is it's forced savings, right? It's great on the equity side of it because as you're putting money, like your payment's going to go up, it's going to cost you more money. But as you're paying down the principal balance on that loan, you'll feel poor, no question. But you're creating a lot of wealth for yourself. And then that building should go up 3-4% every year. So you're getting the benefit of forced savings, and then you don't pay, and it's very tax advantage because it's a self-rental. It's one of the only things that you can use to offset your business income. You just need to make this grouping election on your tax return. So you put your business and the rental together in one group on the tax return, so that it's called the self-rental. And then in year one, the benefit, Taylor, is like, and actually, this is a good example.
Okay.
You buy this building for $900,000. You should get $180,000 first year benefit as a self-rental. So that, will wipe out your income for that year. So the
huge.
tax that you would have paid, right, on your income, now you get a pass on that. So you're like, my payment was, and you can pencil all that out, but that windfall you get in year one, which will save you $60,000 in tax, goes a long way for the down payment on that building.
No doubt.
That's how it works. Anyway.
Yeah.
What is the goals how many employees do you have, and where do you see this thing going?
It's tough. We've reached the cap of what we can do in this box, per year. The first 3 years, I saw about a 20% growth each year in revenue. But these past 3 years, we're wrapping up 2025. I'm already looking at the numbers, and it's been steady the same. I'm within 100,000 gross of each year for the past 3 years. So that's where I'm at the point of scaling versus being comfortable and complacent. I make a great living. My guys all make great money, but introducing more people like I have in the past has definitely caused headaches and quality control issues. And it's tough as a business owner because obviously I care more than anybody about my name and reputation, to where if I brought on more people, I can't see everything that's going on as much. And then I always fear for my reputation to be tarnished, which is something I don't want to do, because I try very hard for that. And I feel like I have a great reputation in town, for the work that we do. So that's where it's tough. I'm at that kind of tipping point. And the other point is, I've been doing it a while. Everybody kind of gets burnt. 15 years, I've done the same thing inside of the same box. I get to work on different cars. That's cool. But at the end of the day, it is the same thing. So I do get a little bit burnt as well. So that's where it's tough. I think in these next few years, I don't know if it'll be a pivot or an expansion, but I don't like being complacent. And at these past 3 years, they've been the same. So it's hard to see which avenue would be the most beneficial.
Well, and that's where where you're at. It's called a plateau, where it's kind of like, this is how much I can manage. You're space constrained, but also there's a volume of people that if you lean on the experts, are going to tell you this is how many people you can effectively manage. And so that means, you're exactly right. I can't touch everything. I remember in my CPA practice when I said, I'm going to have to trust other people to sign tax returns,
I know.
right? It's right. You're like,
Yeah.
and so, but you put systems in place if you want to grow there, right?
Yep.
Now, and that's where I didn't misspeak. I said, if you want to not go there, but grow there, like if you want to grow into that, but you're going to have to invest in all that infrastructure up front.
Yep.
So a lot of times, like this question I ask people, Taylor, is, so if you wanted to take a month off, what would happen to your business?
I would say lose about 30% of our top line.
Right.
Would be my estimate.
So what could you change if you wanted to, so that you could take a month off and have it not impact your business financially? What would have to change?
So I tried. The biggest thing for me is I like to talk to people, so customer comes in, they got a cool car, sometimes we can end up talking for an hour. So my best time spent for me doing this so long is actually doing the work. I'm efficient, I'm fast, I'm good. So doing the work, I feel like if I spend 8 hours just back in the bay doing work, I would make more money than spending half the day up front talking to people. So I brought somebody in and I had them run the whole front. So phones, estimates, all that. And my idea was, okay, I'm going to be way more efficient in the back. I'm just going to be constantly working. He's just going to be handing me keys and I'm just going to do a bunch of work. Well, it lasted about 4 months. I actually lost, I would say, between 10 and 25,000 a month in gross sales from it. And what I realized was he's not a bad guy. He's just not an expert. So it's hard for somebody to feel comfortable spending $700 to $5,000 with me when he can't answer some of those simple questions that I could, don't even have to take a second thought. I know the answer right away. Right. So that's kind of what I noticed is I actually not only had to pay his salary, which cost money, but then losing, top line sales, it was tough. So finding that person, it's tough because every situation with what we do is different, just like most businesses, you don't really do the same thing every day. But I tried it and it didn't work. So I kind of have to come with a new approach, I think, for that to kind of take the burden of the front, I guess, off of me.
Well, and that's where it's like very common, Taylor, where and it's a great business, right? I mean, you can have a great business. It's just a hard business to sell, right? So, and that's where a lot of times what people would prefer to do is if you can solve the riddle, which is, okay, you need two people to replace you. You need somebody to run the front and you need somebody to do the production, right? If you're not producing, you're not earning. But I think if you did that and probably try not to be not sympathetic to people, but there's just a point in time where you get to a certain age where you don't want to be monkeying around cars anymore. You want to go sit at
No
the nice
doubt.
cushy chair at the front desk.
That would be nice.
Right? It'd be nice. So that's where, over time, you're like, okay, is there somebody that's been an installer that knows all this stuff? We call it institutional knowledge. Like, okay, I'm going to hire him. I'm going to probably, pay him a little bit on the front end with the hope, like, if you can prove your metal and then give you a piece of the profits, right? Or the revenue is like, hey, this is how much I run the front. When I'm running the front desk, this is how much money we're making, right? That's the baseline for your comp.
Yep.
If you can outsell me, God bless you. Well, I'll
No
give you
doubt.
some of that upside, right? So
Absolutely.
people are like, no, a young whippersnapper, of course I can do that. So, but now you're aligned. I guess that's the key is you're aligned, right? The problem is the guy you hired before, you weren't aligned. No sweat off his back if he doesn't sell.
Exactly.
Right? Whatever, right? So you put that pain there. And I do this, especially in the business brokerage part of it. If you can align people, I was talking to a guy who helped him sell his paving business. And I call him and say, hey, how's it going? Because this October's this last month. And he says, I got 2 more weeks, Bosma. And I goes, I'm going to get my bonus. And I knew because he got his bonus, it was $90,000 bonus. He got his bonus if he hit the revenue nut that he did the year before, right? And so that he was motivated, right? And then the seller loves it. So the buyer's like, this guy's on fire. He's like my best sales guy, right? So because you're aligned, you wanted that bonus, right? So I sold my business, but I want that bonus. And that's what you do that in life, right? Get aligned with people. And and the thing about entrepreneurship is you just got to keep swinging. You're like, that didn't work. So I got to try it a different way and keep at it. For the benefit of our listeners, if you haven't yet, I would encourage you to subscribe to this. Go to YouTube, subscribe to Bosma and Business. Go to our website, keystone.cpa, sign up for the newsletter. And it's funny because when we started this video podcast, 5 weeks ago on YouTube, we had 0 subscribers.
Oh, yeah.
And
I ventured in the YouTube stuff. It's tough.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now, and I remember that the first week we did this thing, I was so frustrated. I was like, this is not working. This is the lights. In fact, I'm looking at the lights now. You can see them in my glasses. It drives me crazy, but you got to keep swinging. No doubt. I think we're at 300 subscribers now. We've had over 15,000 views. Like, oh my goodness, right? Who knew? This entrepreneur stuff so fascinating. So, but same thing. Who knew that you can save 60,000 in taxes by buying your own shop?
Absolutely.
In year one. Bam.
Yeah, didn't know that. Yeah, I did not know that.
So, that's why I get excited about taxes and what we do. Who knew you can actually get a building if you buy another tent shop, if it has a great location, just buy it. It'll pay for itself in about 3 years. Yeah. All right. So, Taylor, thank you so much. Well, when we come back and tee this up for you. You're going to tell us the number one thing you wish you knew before you started this journey. When we come back, it's Bosma on Business.
I was born with a congenital heart defect and almost died. But thanks to research funded by the American Heart Association, I had heart surgery that saved my life. Learn more at helpheart.org.
Welcome back to Bosma on Business. Your host, Mike Bosma. Taylor Swanson from Northern Nevada Window Tinting, talking about his journey from really high school, bad tint job, to now tint expert.
I would say so.
And going into, you're doing these vinyl wraps for autos too, right?
Yeah. So we do a ton of the paint protection film, obviously the residential, the commercial window tinting, auto tinting. I mess a little bit with the vinyl wrap. It's tough. I mean, mostly the new Cybertrucks. That's what we push hard on because it's easy money. At the end of the day, I push hard on numbers. And makes the most profit. Vinyl wrap's not one of them. It's definitely the window tinting and the paint protection film. But we do quite a bit too. We've been the dealer of the year in Nevada for the past 5 years for Expel. So, which is pretty impressive in Reno, beating everybody down in Las Vegas.
Right.
But it's mainly the paint protection film. I mean, we do a ton of it, and it's just our environment here in Nevada. Once it snows, it's game over. The roads suck.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so we leave our listeners, Taylor, with the number one thing. So if you can go back, you're like, man, I started this thing. I wish I knew. What would that be? What do you wish you knew before you started this entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah. It's hard to say. There's probably quite a few different things that I might have done different. I would say I wish I would know probably more in the commercial side of things, how lucrative it could be. There's other businesses like mine that don't even need a shop, and they actually just there's multiple websites that you can be a part of. I think it's called the Blue Book Contractor, if I remember right. But there is actually projects that are bid to the whole West Coast, and they're big and they're very profitable. I wish I would have known that to where I could go out, do these big jobs rather than have sometimes the burden of this big shop with people and making everybody happy, molding to everybody's different personality, to talk the way. And I'm sure the same way, you're the same thing being a business owner, but there's a lot of stress with that. Being solo sometimes I think could have been a little bit better, a little bit easier.
Okay. Well, that's fine. It's just, it's funny. It's like when I tell people when they go into business is get used to having money, right? I said, it's a mind bend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also get used to how expensive things are. Right?
Oh, no doubt.
I remember in my office building, I got cable TV when we redid it, got the monitor up there so I can watch my basketball, in March Madness. And all of a sudden I get the bill. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're charging me $50 a box? Like it's $5. And like, oh no, you're a commercial account. And I had to, it's like my electrician, well, you're a commercial account. Like you're doing the same work.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
I have noticed that. Yeah, definitely a little bit high grossed, once you have that business tied to the name.
Right. And
No
so
doubt.
it's just, you got to get your mind around it. Right. But then making sure that you have enough money, right? You're going to start paying tax, and then, you just don't want to go crazy on tax planning, right? Just that I think is what really dampens people's enthusiasm for business, because their business is actually making plenty of money, but they put so much of their personal spend in it, and their frustration isn't, they think, well, I'm working so hard. I have to deal with all this stuff. How come I'm not making any money? Well, you're making money. It's just, be a little stereotypical here. I apologize. It's your spouse that's spending it all, but he's running it all through the business, right? I had a client years ago. I heard they went through bankruptcy. He had a real estate company. His wife was spending like nobody, but it was all running through the business credit card. So she had the business credit card, and he never saw it, but the bookkeeper did. It was run all through distributions, not deducting it, right?
Okay.
But I'm like, but he's like, how come I'm paying so much money? I didn't make that much money. It's like, well, your wife spent it. So gave him the deed, and then next thing I got was fired from the wife. So Taylor, thank you so much for sharing your journey. If if there's something newsworthy, make sure you come back, or if you want to expand the shop through acquisition, we can help
No doubt.
you.
Yeah, no, and that's something I would like to talk about too one day, because the goal is, like you said, I want to be in the big comfy chair,
right?
And I'm not there yet.
Right. And that's it. Working yourself out of a job. That's the secret sauce. So speaking of secret sauce, next week, there's business owners, you want to pay attention. Brent Brereton, Perpetuate Capital. He has this deal. You're going to want to tune in, where when you sell your business, pay zero tax through selling it to the employees. It's called an ESOP, Employee Stock Ownership Plan. That's next week. Until then, business owners, make sure you keep that business engine humming. It's Bosma on Business.